We start outside. Too often we start, I see companies, I see our company start inside, incremental improvement, and then at the end of innovation, what's considered innovation, you're looking at the customer. I see it very differently. You must start with the customer. And if you look at, we talked earlier about our new competition, such as Amazon. We all are customers and consumers of the Amazon experience. Our patients, our customers expect the same experience, just like we do. So for us, it's starting with the customer. We're going through a few initiatives today, including a control tower we're building out, but everything's centered around that customer experience. What are we doing to delight the customer? Because it's beyond just great products. People want and expect a great experience. So I think you start with great user design, you engage how the customers are working with you, and you build on there and you bring it inside from there.
The tools that we have today in terms of data are really terrific to think about dynamic customer journeys, where we social listening, for example, big data, looking at claims, looking at a longitudinal journey for a patient using claims data. I mean, it really gives us that bird's eye view and a very personalized view as well into that customer and how they're interacting with our medicines, with their disease, with their own lifestyle and their ecosystem, and how can we support them? How can we be part of that journey? And I think that's a significant change for for how innovation would thrive in our industry.
A lot of times we think that in order for us to make their lives easier, we create the tool by which they need to use in order to make their lives better, and create this separate thing from their lives, and it becomes not as seamless as it could be. And I think now we really need to think about how are they actually operating in the world that they're in, and how can we actually seamlessly be a part of that and help them through the platforms and solutions they're already using, rather than continuously introducing new things.
What we're trying to do is we're unlocking the potential of the data that we have across the organization. And for me, it's really converting the data that we have and that we've generated into a commodity for the business. And I don't mean commodity in that we intend to sell it, but we intend to maximize the use of it. So our R&D data needs to be utilized in our manufacturing processes, and it needs to be utilized into our sales and backwards and forwards across the full spectrum, the full value chain. So you're exactly right. Data in itself, hidden in a silo, generated to answer one question, has finite, usage. Whereas when you start to think about that, and it's back to the change management thing and thinking about how we can really utilize the data across the business for our patients, it's when you are able to connect that, when you're able to catalog your data, when you have a federated data and analytics platform that's able to pull data from different areas of the business. That's when you start to see the full value of the data being generated.
You create the right incentives, right? And the point about failing fast, I think, is also, in our industry, we traditionally get measured by, the good medicines we bring to market, right? But there's also an element of failure. For every medicine, there's 10 that didn't make it. So really thinking about, how do we continue to build on that risk taking so that it's seen as a plus as opposed to a failure? And how do we make sure that everybody's incentivized in the company to do just that? And it's not just coming up with the good ideas, but also thinking about, if somebody else came up with a good idea, how can I copy that and bring it into my function? Because it may have a different iteration. Maybe it started in manufacturing, but it has a different iteration in commercial or in R&D that we can all benefit from.
To have that culture, as a culture, you talked about the sponsorship from the top down earlier, Christina, which I absolutely believe in as well. But the nurturing of that. So even in the incentivization that you're trying to identify now with, I think there's something else though. I think there's a leadership accountability around innovation that sometimes I think other people kind of look at other parts of the organization and say, that's their job. I got to run the business over here. And that's where you start to break the culture down a little bit. I think as leaders in any organization of any function, there has to be recognition that if you truly want to change your business, then as leaders, you have to do that in a collective way. And I don't mean everybody suddenly innovating all independently, because that does create chaos. I'm thinking more along the lines of just agreeing about, hey, how do you run the business and how do you change the business? And I think it was said earlier, what are you doing to change your piece of the pie today? And how does that impact the other folks around you? And I think that's an important aspect of leaders that gets missed.
I think also, with innovation, we often think of it as, iterative and creative and free form, but actually you can create process around it that encourages people to think about it as their part of their daily jobs, right? A very common way to approach this is the 70-20-10 rule, right? So 70% of your job should be keeping the lights on, business as usual stuff. 20%, what's that incremental innovation stuff that are more or less sure bets or things that you can really experiment with, but has a pretty good chance of having a good outcome. Then 10% could be more of the transformational, disruptive stuff that you want to just take a big bet on. Those are common type of processes and structures that you can sort of build into a culture that to really start to think about this as adopting it as part of what they do, not taking over what they do.